Last November, I had the privilege of accompanying my sister Amanda on a trip to New York City to visit our brother Andrew, for it was to be a week-long trip filled with bonding, laughing, crying, and, of course, a misadventure or two. When we arrived in New York, Amanda was in good health. She didn't have a fever, although she would acquire one just a day into our trip. She was not nauseated, and she wasn't tired. We had so much fun on that first day, walking around Andrew's neighborhood in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It was autumn in New York City, and it was beautiful out. Amanda kept saying how she loved the cold air, and Andrew and I, knowing the condition she was in, kept asking her things like, "Are you okay? Do we need to rest? Should we go back to the apartment?" But she didn't want to go back. She had never seen Andrew's new neighborhood before this trip, and she was taking it all in. The sights, the sounds, the smells, and the crisp autumn air. We drank coffee at a park directly around the corner from Andrew's apartment for an hour or so, and watched all of the interesting people and talked about almost anything and everything. That evening, when Tobia had gotten home from work, we all sat in the apartment and ate Andrew's homemade spaghetti and bolognese sauce. I can still picture it as if it were yesterday. The four of us piled on top of each other in their cozy New York City apartment. The bond that happened between the four of us was so strong, our conversation was so in sync. It was not until the next day, however, that the misadventures began. Sorry, Andrew, the story has to be told. Andrew had planned to rent a zip car for a couple of hours to drive us through the city, with the intent of us not having to walk, cab it, or take the subway. He wanted to take us around and show us the city from his point of view. Now keep in mind, Andrew has lived in New York City for 10 years, so driving isn't his strong suit. In fact, when he had brought up the idea of him chauffeuring us around the city, Amanda and I both got a little nervous, but in the end, we're up for the adventure. Everything was going well. Andrew was showing us the sights, pointing out things that he wanted Amanda to see. He decided that we needed to get on the FDR. To get back to a burger place he wanted to take us to for lunch. The FDR would be the most direct route. Well, that's when it hit the fan. As he was attempting to merge onto the FDR, the cars whizzing by at 75 plus miles per hour wouldn't get over so Andrew could merge properly. Meanwhile, the cars behind us were piling up, trying to do the exact same thing. Well, we hit the curb, immediately popping our front right tire. Thank God that there was a road shoulder just yards from the incident, the only shoulder we would later discover anywhere near us on the FDR. Now picture, if you will, the three of us trying on the shoulder trying to change a flat, cars zooming by, not one of us knowing what in the heck we were doing. Not only that, but there was zero margin for error. If one of the traveling vehicles would have hit our zip car, we would have been smushed between our car and a wall that was directly on the other side of us. It was definitely scary at the moment. So Andrew, in his Balenciaga shoes and his Marc Jacobs jeans, began stomping on the jack, trying to loosen the screws, but to no avail. Amanda would later refer to him as looking as though he were doing the Cotton Eye Joe line dance on the jack. Finally, a cop came to our rescue, and although he was not going to physically assist us in changing the tire, he had dispatched the only tow truck that was authorized to tow on the FDR, and he told us that he would wait with us until the truck arrived. At this point, Amanda looked at me, nudged me, and whispered, "Watch this, I'm going to have to play my cancer card." She started chatting with the cop and began telling him her story. How she had stage 4 breast cancer, and that she was taking time now to visit with family, what she had referred to as tying up loose ends. She had such a way of talking about her situation without sounding like she was looking for sympathy. Her plan worked, however. The cop marched right over to the tire, stomped a couple of times on the jack, turned around and said, "You've got to be kidding me." With a couple of stomps, the screws were loosened, and he called Andrew over to have him finish up the job. Poor Andrew, he said, "But you have those huge boots on. That must be how you loosened them when I couldn't." Amanda looked at me. We were trying not to giggle at Andrew's logic. It had gone from a high-stress, scary situation to a rather comical one, and fast. After about 2 hours, we were all fixed up, donut tire in place, and we were back on the FDR, driving to drop the car off and then head back to the apartment. Up until the days before Amanda died, she and I would sit and laugh at our FDR flat tire experience and relive the visual of our brother and his tire-changing dance moves. That afternoon, we got back to the apartment so Amanda could rest. When she woke up, she had a fever of 102 degrees, and she was starting to not feel so good. She was taking a leave in an attempt to reduce her fever, and she had told Andrew and myself, "Now you listen to me. I'm your older sister, and I'm telling you that you better not tell Mom and Dad I don't feel well." It was difficult with my mother calling me every couple of hours asking me, "Is she doing okay? She's not sick, right? Does she have a fever?" I lied to her, for Amanda, for Andrew and me as well. We didn't want her to go. But she never got better. In fact, she got downright worse. Until about the 4th day into the trip, she got out of the bath and started crying, saying that she needed to go home because she was so sick. She called my father, and he got her a flight home that evening. I stayed behind because the price of the tickets were through the roof. Her entire cab ride back, she and I text back and forth, laughing about the flat tire, admiring all the delicious dishes Andrew had prepared for us, and discussing how sad we all were that she got sick and had to leave early. I still have our correspondence on my iPhone, and I read it when I need to hear Amanda's voice. One of the things she said in those texts, and it makes me cry every time I read it, was how she said she had cried the entire cab ride to the airport because she did not want to have to leave yet, and that she would cherish forever the special times we all shared on that trip. Obviously, it ended up being the last trip she would ever take to New York. It won't be my last, but the city will never be the same when I return. I will smile when I see the park we sat and drank coffee in. I will cry when I see a billboard for the musical Wicked. We were to see it the night after Amanda left. And I most certainly will laugh out loud when I see signs for the FDR. After our trip, when I returned home, I couldn't wait to see her. Our trip to New York City had brought us closer than we had ever been in our lives and changed it into a relationship where, even if I were unable to see her every day for whatever reason, we would text each other or talk like we never had before. I will miss Amanda forever, and although I have a million memories that I will hold close to my heart, our trip to New York will always be one of my most special times of my life, and I thank God for it.